Here we are in the Croft Connors Fire Company in the town of Poughkeepsie, and here we are with John Richardson. When did you join the fire department, John?
I joined it right out of college in 1970.
And why did you join?
I had an uncle who was a career firefighter in Mount Vernon, New York. He actually did die in the line of duty after I had joined here. A heart attack after getting back from a fire scene. As a kid, I used to remember going down to visit my grandparents and my relatives, and we'd stop in to see him at the firehouse. He seemed like he was always working when we went down there. And he just got me interested in becoming a firefighter up here.
That's great. What was your most unique experience as a member here?
As a member, not anything to do with the with fighting fires, was probably the year that we raffled off a house. We had a person who came up to us and asked us if we were interested in raffle off his house, which was up in Hyde Park. He came to me directly, and I talked it over with the members, and we decided we'd take a chance on it. And we had a deal where we would buy the house from him after we sold the raffle tickets. We sold raffle tickets for $100 each, which was a lot of money back in the late 70s. And we sold 3,000 tickets. He wanted $150,000 for the house, and we cleared about $150,000 in profit on that house raffle. That week we had the night of the drawing, we had a huge cocktail party here. Everybody was invited to bring a guest. We had about 2,000 people showed up for the drawing. We had Spack and Kill Road was closed from the top of the hill down to Route 9. People were parked up in the shopping centers all the way up Route 9 to the high school area and around here. And we had the drawing, and the guy actually won a house, and then we had a couple of smaller prizes to go. When I called him up to tell him he had won a house, he didn't believe me. He wasn't at the raffle, and he thought it was one of his friends joking around, and I finally had to tell him to look up the firehouse phone number, call up, and then ask who won the house. And you'll find out it was you. I remember his name was Vinny Pederossi down in Beacon. And that's probably the most unique thing we've ever done here as far as the fire company.
How long did you sell the tickets for?
We sold the tickets for about a year. We actually took out ads in the Albany newspaper and all the penny savers all the way up and down the Hudson Valley. That was in the days when the banks were paying 15% interest. It was in those really bad times of inflation.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So we were taking in money and putting it in the bank at 15% interest, and we made a ton of money. All that money we made on interest is what paid for the cocktail party.
Wow.
And it actually worked out really great. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. A lot of people tried to do it after that. Several fire departments tried to hold house raffles, and during the middle of the raffle, I got a call from the Attorney General of New York, and he says, cease and desist. I explained to him, we're pretty far into this. I don't know how we're going to stop it. He says, I'm going to let you go. But at that point, other fire departments were trying to do the same thing. They were looking for people selling the house, and other raffles had started, and he forced all other raffles in the state to stop.
Wow, that is unique.
Yes.
It's definitely unique. Can you tell me what was the biggest fire you ever fought?
Wow.
Now there's many, but what was the biggest?
I'd say one of the biggest fires I ever fought was one of my fires in my first year as a member. Was the old Red Oaks Mill hangar. Many people don't even realize that out in the Red Oaks Mill intersection up the road here was the Red Oaks Mill, or the Poughkeepsie Airport. And in the Red Oaks Mill intersection there was an airplane hangar, which was all a huge boat construction building. And that burned one night. It was a Sunday night. I know we had just gotten back from a softball game. And we rode out of here. I was riding on the back step of our old Truck 1 going up there, and we could see the flames and we could see the smoke, and we knew we had something. And it was kind of funny, in those days nobody had their own gear, so we're jumping up on top of the rig going 50 miles an hour up Spack and Kill Road, putting on boots, getting our rubber coats on, and getting ready to fight the fire. And it was a big fire, and it was a hot fire. It was really unbelievable. And one of the first things I was asked to do was go up on the roof and vent. And I went up on the roof, and it was a typical boat construction roof, like you see the old ShopRites, the old department stores, like the Hackensack, New Jersey fire, where all those firemen got killed years ago. And I was up there cutting with the saw, and as I cut, the flames were coming out the saw curve. It was burning that much underneath us, and the roof was getting real tacky. We got a quick hole cut on there and got off of it, fortunately in time, but looking back at it now, that was pretty stupid of us to be up on that roof when there was flames right under us, and the flames were coming through wherever we cut with the saw.
Wow. Wow, that's quite interesting. How long were you at the fire for, you think?
That fire is ironic in that in those days we used to keep track on, well, we still keep track of it, but alarm went out at say 8:02 p.m. on that Sunday night, and what we called recall back in the days was at 8:02 a.m. We were at the scene with a piece of equipment that called in service exactly 12 hours to the minute.
Wow.
I still remember that to this day.
So when do you think the rotting on the back step ended for you guys here?
I would have to say we probably did that 5 or 6 years that I was a member. I guess it was in the late 70s, early 80s. We stopped and we started to get in the, where we rode in the back of the driver's seats facing backward, and that was an open configuration cab. There was no closed cabs then, which was still a lot nicer than what we have now where you're confined, but it was quite interesting. And I mean, I had some experiences where the night of the Roosevelt home fire, we were on standby because all of Roosevelt, Statsburg, Hyde Park, they were all fighting a fire at the Anderson School. They had a 3-alarm fire up there. They had just put us on standby, and then they called us to relocate. And as we were relocating, the Roosevelt home fire came in, and we were first due to the Roosevelt home fire, which was a frigid, cold night. I mean, bitter cold. And I was on the back step of truck 1 that night also riding up there. And it was pretty brutal. By the time we got there, we were pretty cold.
Okay. What was the most serious incident you participated in?
Wow. I've seen a lot of bad car accidents along Route 9. Some really, really tremendous ones, with 4 or 5 children killed in a van accident. But I guess any of the ones that had a person who died in it. And I guess one of the most memorable ones for that was when the Ford dealership, which is now called Poughkeepsie Ford down the road here, when that burned, and it was a fire that was set by an arsonist. And I was living right up the street then, and we heard about 3 in the morning, I heard a huge explosion. And it just woke me up out of bed. I ran out into the street because my radio had gone off. That was in the days we still had the old Plectron boxes.
Yeah.
And I go out in the street. My neighbor across the street was a firefighter also, and he came out and he goes, "What the heck was that?" All we could think of from the way it sounded with the explosion, we thought there was an explosion at Trap Rock. And we looked up at some point, and then we could see the flames and the smoke at Poughkeepsie Ford. And before they even had dispatched us, we were on our way down the street. And as the arsonist had tried to booby trap it, he put M80s all through the building. And as we were going in, I was coming in from the north and coming in from the garage entrance going towards the showroom where the fire started. And as we were going down, every time we'd take 20 steps, an M80 would go off, and we'd back down 30, back out 30 steps. And we were just not making much progress because things were exploding all around us during the fire.
Did you guys know they were M80s?
We did after. We didn't know at the time what it was. At first we were thinking it were car tires blowing up.
Oh, wow.
And then we found out that they were M80s blowing up all over the place.
Did they ever catch the guy that did it?
He died.
Oh.
He died. That was the ironic part is he had taken a gas pump into the building and wired the gas pump so it was pumping gas. And I believe it said like 76 gallons of fuel was on the meter. They had a 30, 40 foot long hose on this gas pump so that they could pump cars up from not being right up against the building. He had wired it open, and then somehow something exploded, caused an electrical shock of some sort, whether it be a phone ringing or whatever, set off the explosion, and he ended up getting blown up, and he died in the fire.
Oh, good for him. What is the biggest difference you have seen in the fire department from when you joined until today?
Well, the main difference is naturally that we just don't get the volunteers like we used to. At one time we had 100 volunteers. When we had a fire, there would be cars parked up and down the road from volunteers coming to the scene. And we would have so much help. And back in those days, we had minimal gear and minimal Scott packs. So half of the time, if you were lucky enough to set a gear, you probably didn't get a Scott pack. We'd go in and fight a fire without the Scott packs. Nowadays, we know the hazards, and that's more so because of what's burning now. In those days, it was, just wood and cotton and things like that. Now we have all these synthetics and plastics burning. So I think the biggest thing is what's causing everybody to get cancer, the heat of the fires that are burning, how much quicker they burned in the old days. And I guess the only thing I can say is, fortunately, because of smoke detectors, we don't get the number of fires we had. I mean, in my early years, we were fighting 30, 40 second alarm, third alarm fires in a year.
Wow.
Now you're lucky if you get a couple a year.
Amazing.
Yeah,
What's the difference you've seen in the equipment during your membership?
that's huge. First of all, they're all automatics. You don't have to double clutch a standard to drive it. Just much easier to use. The pump panels are a lot easier to figure out. They're set up so much easier to operate. A little bit more safety as far as everything on the equipment. The brakes are much better. I mean, I remember days when people would, one of our members was driving over the overpass and going across to IBM, and the brakes failed, and he rolled right out to the parking lot of IBM because he had lost his brakes. And different things with the old air brakes and stuff were a lot different, and they would ice up because of the condensation, and the tanks would cause problems with the brakes, and they're just built so much safer if you have an accident or if you roll over with everything that's in them. And the seatbelts naturally help a lot, and lighting is tremendous.
Would you say back in the day they didn't wear their seatbelts much?
Well, we didn't have seatbelts for the first probably 25 years, and then it took a while for people to sit there and figure that you got to start wearing seatbelts. And then, I don't know when it was, probably 15, 20 years ago, Wellington finally made it mandatory that you wear your seatbelt. And sometimes it was hard to do, but if you scot it up and you had the seatbelt on, it made it a little difficult. But now they've made it so you can do that and still be buckled in good.
Yeah. See, they even try to pass a law that you have to do it because I don't think there was any kind of a law if you were in a fire truck that you had to buckle up.
Actually, I think the law still says we're exempt in New York State from wearing seatbelts.
Thank you. Us and the police.
Oh, okay.
What difference have you seen in apparatus during your membership?
Well, just bigger pumps, better pumps. The aerials are a lot stronger. They're rated heavy duty. I remember the first aerial we had here was a 75-footer. That was very unstable. Had just a very little bit of a jack stand that you screwed down by hand. Now with the big jacks that come out, you feel much safer up there, especially when you have a 110-foot aerial that you're hanging off the tip and you're all coming off the side. You don't get that fear of it tipping over because it doesn't have a jack spread that's good enough. All the apparatus is just 100% nicer, easier to operate, and much safer.
And you need fewer guys to man them today than there were back in the other.
That's for sure.
Going back when you first started, right?
Yep. And fortunately, without the manpower, that's a key thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there a truck committee when you go out to get a?
In Arlington, we form a truck committee. I've been on the truck committee all the time. I was either a commissioner or a chief. I was usually always on the truck committees and probably was responsible for speccing about 7 or 8 of the different apparatus in the district that we still have. My name is on quite a few of the trucks, even in here, as probably being either a commissioner or a chief. And we kind of work as a team to figure out what's best. We go and look at a lot of different equipment and try and take the best of everything. And we never seem to be satisfied with what is considered, off the shelf. We customize and make it to the best of what we need for Arlington.
Are they basically all same brand or same manufacturer?
We've had emergency ones for, years ago we had Seagrave apparatus, and then we kind of switched to emergency one, and then we went to a bunch of several Ferrara fire equipment. We have 4 Ferraras, and now we've gone back to E1s.
Do you have any lemons?
Yes, we do. We have definitely have our Ferrara tower ladder is a lemon. You may have read that East Fishkill's got a lawsuit with their tower ladder from Ferrara. At the last commissioners meeting, I urged our board to jump on that lawsuit, and the 2 of us should go in for that together because that thing is out of service 1/3 of all the time it's needed.
And they have the lemon law now in New York State.
Yep.
But I heard the manufacturers in Louisiana?
Louisiana.
But I think Louisiana has their own lemon law down there as well?
Yep. And from what I heard, they have a good chance of being able to collect on that truck. So I hope we're able to do the same thing and replace our tower ladder.
That's good for me too. What positions have you held firemetically?
I
Yeah.
have done, back from my first time as an assistant chief back in the 80s, early 80s. I have spent almost 20 years as either a chief officer or an assistant chief in the fire district. I came back 3 different times to be chief. I would be a chief, go out, do something else, come back years later when there was a need for a chief again. I did 10 years as a commissioner in Arlington, and for 5 years I was Dutchess County Car 5 at that time. They didn't go by 15. It was I was in charge of the 5th Battalion, which is now, or Zone 5 they called it in those days. It's now the 5th Battalion that Ray Nichols is now in charge of. And he took over from me when I went out as deputy coordinator for the Battalion 5.
Did you do anything on the administrative side?
My early years, I was a secretary, a treasurer, and a vice president.
Wow, okay.
About the only position I haven't held is president of the company. And I've been a trustee here at Croft Corners now for the last 5 or 6 years, and we're actually quite busy with that right now. We're putting a second story on this building, and that will be, we've been dealing with architects, and I'm the head of that committee and working on that to put a second story on here to house the career staff with a little bit better sleeping quarters and so forth.
That's great. Now, how many commissioners do you have here in?
There's
Arlington.
5 commissioners at Arlington, and right now 2 of them happen to be out of this fire station, which is good. We've had some horrible commissioners over the years who have devastated this fire district and made it a horrible thing for volunteers. We actually have had commissioners that vote no on volunteers, on bringing in volunteers. They vote no for recruiting of volunteers. One person in particular has been absolutely horrible to this fire district.
Is that bringing good service to the town of
No.
Poughkeepsie?
No, he actually got the board, led by him. One of our captains had to leave because he got married and moved out of the area temporarily. He was a captain, he was a paramedic, he was an EMT, he was a driver on all our equipment, and he was captain when he had to leave. When he wanted to come back a year and a half later, this commissioner voted and got the board to vote no, not to allow him back in. That was during a reign of terror where he didn't want volunteers.
Wow, wow, that's horrible. What year did Poughkeepsie go, town of Poughkeepsie go career? Do you remember that?
Well, I know they had career firefighters back probably about 50, 60 years ago out of our headquarters building on Main Street, the old headquarters on 766 Main Street. At that time, when I joined, they had 4 paid firefighters on duty at a time, and they had a paid chief, Clayton Laffin. And we also did our own dispatching at that time. So Clayton was always there during the day. The 4 guys were there. 1 guy had to stay back to dispatch, and 3 guys would go on calls. And then they had a great cadre of volunteers in all 4 companies in the district that would support them. So basically, they each drove a piece of equipment, depending on what went out, and they were paid firefighters, but basically their duty was to drive at that point.
Amazing. What's the oldest company in the
Our
town?
headquarters company is the oldest, and I think then Red Oaks Mill is the next oldest, and then I believe us, we're in our 69th year.
What's headquarters in what year?
They're going to be reaching 100, I think, in the next 1 or 2 years. I know
Wow.
there were some
Okay.
talks back in the day about hosting one of the Dutchess County Volunteer Firemen's Conventions. I think that's kind of fallen by the wayside since they're very low on volunteers and would have nowhere near enough manpower to do anything about it. But I think they got it within a year or 2. They hope to have that, I think they're ready for that anniversary.
That's amazing. All right, John, I thank you and
Okay,
for the insight.
yep.